Okay, it's recording. We're good.
All right. Excuse me. It's, what is it, 105? This is Marquette Township Board Budget Work Session, Tuesday, September 29th. And we're in the community center of the conference in the community room of the Township Hall. Thank you. Some of us are Zooming. We've got a couple on Zoom. Roll call, Randy, please.
Trustee Marks.
Present.
Trustee LaRue.
Great. Here.
Trustee Wiegand.
Here.
Trustee Everson.
Here.
Treasurer Johnson.
Here.
Clerk Rattari is here, and Supervisor Durant.
Here.
Staff present is Manager Kangas. Planner McCarthy is with us on Zoom, and Superintendent of Public Works Lenny Bodinas is here also.
Excellent. Thank you. We have no public. Any comments?
I have not got any emails for public comment.
Okay. All right. We are going to be, do we have the presentation?
Yep, Jason.
Yeah, Jason's going to do it.
That's what he's here for?
Yeah.
Okay, we will definitely do that first then. Okay.
Everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, I'm at home this afternoon, along with, I guess, doing this presentation. I'm also getting ready to record a MAP, Michigan Association of Planning session this afternoon. The 2020 conference for Michigan Association of Planning is going to happen virtually, and our MAC 2, or Marquette Area Sustainability for, well, the MAC 2 project itself got selected to be one of the sessions. So at 3 o'clock, we'll be recording that. So I've been going through that presentation as well. And I'll send that along. It's a really interesting document, final document, and the presentation really synthesizes all of those ideas that we've been talking about with them for the last year. This particular presentation here was tasked by staff to be created as an informational piece for the upcoming 2020 ballot. And this is information on a millage proposal for recreational purposes. On the 2020 ballot, township voters will notice the recreational millage intended to provide current service level operation and maintenance funding for Lions Field, Schwimmer Park, and our shared use paths. So we only have 2 parks that we maintain, those being Lions Field and Schwimmer Park. And this includes conservative budgeting for labor costs, materials, equipment, and administrative services required to maintain current level services for the next 2 years. And then I also included, excuse me, the actual language in the box there. Next, went into, who administers recreation in the township. Obviously, we have an administrative team that consists of the board, which provides the planning commission direction, and then the planning commission gives directive to the recreation committee. Building and grounds employees help maintain and take care of the park systems, and planning and zoning staff help out with grants and other kinds of administration as needed. Our tasks and responsibilities, well, we acquire property, we develop property, we write grants, we do maintenance and upkeep, and we also do future park planning. And this actual proposal is actually in and part of our current action plan for the existing on-file recreation plan. In recent years, we've acquired, developed, and redeveloped recreational property per our master plan, recreation plan, and of course, favorable community survey results with regard to increasing what we have available to our residents in a recreational setting. We've also had favorable public and private partnerships. We've been successful with grants. We've also formulated great relationships over the last 10 years, at least since I've been here. I know that there was some formulated previously, but I think that's one of the things that we can be most proud of is the partnerships and all the different people and groups and services and businesses and volunteers that it takes to be good stewards and volunteers for our parks. And as such, you know, these are not the individuals per se. These are businesses, organizations, both regulatory and nonprofits, for-profit, all the different folks that have, at least businesses and organizations that have contributed as well. We've also had 50 different individuals that have, you know, donated or provided in-kind service or volunteer hours for those kinds of projects that we've been working on to improve our spaces. So then we get into the cost of, you know, what it takes to operate our current park system and what we have, you know, as far as assets. And in 2000, we took the numbers from 2011 to 2020, and 2020 is projected. But you can definitely see, you know, although there's some undulation in the numbers, there's definitely been, you know, an increase, especially in the last, I would say 4 years. You know, we've had requirements to maintain the parks per our agreements with Marquette Little League and Marquette's area public schools, things of that nature, as well as increase in our non-motorized transportation network, which is a, you know, a very popular thing in the community and something that the community wants to expand upon, at least by survey and those kind of things. So maintenance of those things, those assets are very important, and with that comes a cost. Wanted to give a little bit of background on, you know, that we don't just shoot from the hip with regard to recreation planning. This is something that we have thought out, you know, we feel extremely well. In fact, in 2013, we had a Lions Field Recreation Area Master Plan that was developed that denoted, you know, proposed improvements to the park. And the very improvements to the park were provided through ideas through the master planning process and through community surveys. And here is the fruition of all of that work. You've got the ice rink and the warming building, which is very popular, the new kiddie park, the revamped ball field, which was probably one of the first projects that was done, the new scoreboard, of course, and most recently, and with the final scope item for all of our grants that we received, was the installation of native landscaping. So, you know, the recycled plastic trash receptacles, recycling bins, picnic tables, universal design on the park equipment, ADA compliance in the restrooms. All of those things are best management practices and requirements to have, you know, to be able to get grants. And of course, we've used these parks for many different events. The fire department with the great static displays that they do, demonstrations, softball tournaments, community day, live music, and even some intramural hockey, which is great to see as well. Same thing goes for Schwimwood Park. Initially, just this segment of the park is what was donated to the township. And through the acquisition program, through the MNRTF, we were able to acquire an additional 8 acres. So this is roughly 13 acres here. There's intermittent trails that are, you know, were loosely constructed. The parking lot was smaller. There was really no entrance features or anything to denote even connectivity to the Iron Ore Heritage Trail, which runs right through this area. So over time, we developed this master plan in 13 as well. And we were able to expand the parking lot, add a nice pea gravel trail up to the railroad grade here. And now the park serves as a trailhead, which we should promote more, because I see people parking right on these southwest and southeast corners of 492 when there's a whole parking lot for them right here. Somehow we need to promote that, but we'll work on that in the future. And of course, now you have, and this was kind of a bit of a foreshadowing here, with the tunnel being proposed. This was well before that project even got off the ground in 2013. So you could see that there was some foreshadowing and certainly some planning that went into this. And again, we have all of our partners and people who have donated their time and energy towards the completion of some of these projects. So here you have the trail that was just showed you on the map. Again, recycled materials, sustainable materials, both even on the sign kiosks, those are recycled plastic. The landscaping project was the latest to go in right at the end of summer. And that took a while to get, not so much the materials, but contractors to be able to do that job. And then Planner Dietrichson, excuse me, has done a great job of adding some informational kiosks, kind of a "you are here, here's where you can go" type of maps. And the park looks great. Shared use pathways are the other infrastructure that we've been successful in expanding upon. So here you have shared use pathways. We've worked towards improving and increasing connectivity for residents and visitors who walk or bike in the community. As an example, the Iron Ore Heritage Trail, which is kind of the main artery, if you will, that we're benefited from having that in our community. This is the new trail from above. This is Menards here in the rear of the AT&T building, but this is north to south connectivity from the new tunnel to the Iron Ore Heritage Trail. This picture shows the completed roundabouts, or the one roundabout on the east, and the tunnel that runs through here. And then there's a pathway that comes up and runs all the way to in front of Napa. And that will hopefully be connected to Commerce in 2021 with another successful TAP grant. We haven't heard back on that yet, but that was a nice investment on the township to further connect and really give people the ability to traverse the entire corridor safely and off of the highway right away to visit our bustling entertainment and retail area. The bottom left image shows the intersection of, this is Moran, Venture, and Commerce Drive. Here's the Township Hall and the Fire Hall. And this loosely shows the Safe Routes to School pathway that was installed. So although it was a different funding source for a different reason, it still serves as an additional segment to our non-motorized pathway system. And then here is a more rustic type of trail in the community, and that is in Schwemmwood Park and the walking bridge that's found there, which is currently being upgraded by NTN, who has developed a single track trail from the entrance at Lost Creek on the Schwemmwood Park side of 492 over to the tunnel. And then of course we have other larger trails in the community that we partner with and work closely with, and that's the North Country National Scenic Trail. So in summary, the reason that the millage proposal is being proposed is that it's in response to increased demand for recreational opportunities in the township by the residents, increased demand for park facility maintenance and upkeep. Obviously, if you expand your facilities and your non-motorized pathways, you do have to, and it is a requirement that you maintain those, not just sweeping them in the summer and snow blowing in the winter, but also making sure that the surface of the material is kept up as well. Obviously, big box retail tax revenue reductions have played a significant role in our ability to fund or assist with funding in some of the larger projects. And we'll probably take a couple steps back from those types of projects in the near future, because obviously this proposal is just to maintain what we have right now. The uncertainty of COVID-19 impacts on state revenue sharing, I know that was something that was discussed in the office as far as both tax and property. And then the desire of staff, and I'm sure the pride of the township board and the committees and all the folks that work on these projects, the desire to maintain the assets that we have. And with that, I'd be open to any questions or comments, anything that you feel needs to be massaged. The other, I guess I will say, the other item that we put together, let me just share that really quick too, is the proposed flyer. And we were talking about putting something on the back of the water bill or the utility bill. And so we just took some verbiage from that. If I can shrink this down, yeah, that would be like what the page would look like essentially, but same language. You know, we just highlighted some bullet points on the November 2020 ballot. You'll notice the recreational millage. Here's a couple of reasons or a couple of, you know, tidbits about what we've been working on and how that's, you know, how recreational opportunities have been expanded. And then, you know, the proposal includes conservative budgeting for labor costs, materials, equipment, and administrative services required to maintain current level for the next 2 years. And then obviously I included the bullet points from the last slide. And what I proposed to do, and I think what was agreed upon previously, was to, you know, if somebody wanted to learn more about this, they could just click on our website, and then on the bottom or under the topics, the main topics that we have on our splash page, we could simply put that presentation that I just gave you. And of course, we could add I could add my contact information at the end if people had specific questions. But I'm open to your comments and your suggestions as far as the content and how you feel about it.
I think it's not good.
Jason, how much extra work would it be to have your oration be part of the presentation? Can we record that and put it on the website? The slides, the pictures and everything is great, but we know what that stuff is all about. The public may not. So.
Yeah, if you're able to slice that out, if Clerk Rattari was able to slice that out, or I would, I guess I could do it separately, or we could do it at the board meeting, because I know you guys wanted to see this again, or I think Trustee Wiegand had suggested that this be part of a regular board meeting agenda. Yeah, I could polish up my chops a little bit and represent that, and then you could take that recording and put that on.
That would work, because there's so much more depth to what you're saying that explains the slides, you know, and you couldn't even write all of that down nobody could spend the time to look at it. But that background is invaluable.
I have a question. On the information that you're going to put on with the water bills, has that been passed by attorney to make sure that there's no problem with that?
It has not, Ernie. That's something that I wanted the board to be in agreement with first, and then after that I will send it to him. I talked to Andrea today, and she said that the bills actually don't go out until the 2nd or 3rd of the month. Excuse me. So we do have a couple of days to work with that, and I would suspect that Attorney Zappa could take care of the review of that pretty quickly.
So the comment you had made earlier today is that we have a little bit of a conflict with fitting everything in this time, correct?
Well, there's the calendar, and the back of the calendar appears to be spoken for because of leave and brush drop off. There was a suggestion made that you could include, if let's say this was I don't know, not a separate mailing, but included with the utility bill. So the utility bill is one page, and then the other page is the calendar, right? And then the back side of the calendar. So it's not a 2-page mailing.
But then you put this on the back of the bill, right? Is that what you're thinking?
If that's possible, yeah.
I think that makes sense. Now, one thing I did note, put on the back of that, Jason, it did not include the actual millage language. I think if you put the millage language on there, it will definitely lead to more hits on the website.
Sure, and there's definitely room to include that.
And then how about an example of $250,000 home would pay blah?
Yeah. So we
Per
know
year.
a $200,000 home has a taxable value of 100,000. A half a mil is $50.
Yeah.
$50 on a $200,000 home. So we could
Yeah,
easily do
some
the same
kind of-
calculation for a $250,000 home.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, that all sounds great, and that's completely doable.
okay. I think that looks good.
When, did you say when it's gonna be on the website?
Well, I
it
would
would be-
like to have the board approve it before we did anything with it.
Well, we
So
can't make any motions here. We'd have to wait till the board meeting unless we call a special meeting.
Well, I think you got consensus.
Yeah,
Yeah, do
get
you actually have to
consensus.
make a motion to approve it, or can you just go on consensus and just have them move ahead?
That's what he thinks he needs.
Yeah.
Well, no, I would suspect consensus is fine. Yeah,
Okay. Well, you already directed you to do this, so.
right. I just
And-
wanted
and this-
you to be comfortable with what was being put out there. Obviously, we always try to do as professional a job as possible. And I think the reason that we had so much success with the road millage was because we were transparent with our information and just put it out there like, this is what it is, guys. And if you want to support this, this is what's going to happen. And it's the same thing here. You know, if the voters vote for this, we're going to continue to have a good park system that's maintained and pathways that are kept clean and usable.
Yeah, my suggestion about presenting it at the board was to present it at the 2 board meetings in October. So that it gets a little more coverage out to the public.
The only disadvantage is half of the ballots are already out and I'm still holding mine because I'm still checking stuff. So some people might be doing that too and not just filling it in and sending it.
Yeah, do
But-
what you can do, right?
Yeah, our time frame is a lot smaller now.
Yeah, I also wanted to do a piece that, you know, could be distributed to the media for their information, and it would basically answer all the questions, or hopefully a lot of them.
So the presentation you do, what is it, the 7th, our next meeting, 6th?
Thanks.
That could be our segment, right? You could give that to Channel 6 or whatever, and they could cut it up, or that would be the part that would go to the website.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not savvy enough with video editing to do that, but I suspect Clerk Rattari is.
And I think like,
Okay. So to answer the question, then it could be on the website right after the board meeting.
at least the next day.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we can polish this up then and have that ready for the board meeting then.
plus Roger would be able to watch it too at the same time. I would send that to him though.
Yeah,
beforehand,
first. Yeah.
and make sure it's okay, and then, but it is okay at the board meeting.
Because we still run that fine line, as he keeps pointing out, of making sure it's just facts. It seems like it is, but he could pick something up that we're not catching, that is not a fact or not presented as a fact. It looks like we're pushing it. That's what he wants to make sure of. But it seems fine.
Okay.
John, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I think one of the successes we had with the road millage was letting people know exactly what it would cost them. And they could do that by calling in. You could call in and identify your property,
Road, yeah.
and you could get a number if you wanted it as to what it, because I don't think the millage is that oppressive. I think people will get by it just like they did with the road. I think we should make it everything available to them if they want it. And I think that option should be considered.
You talked about breaking it down into 2 different, 200,000 houses or values. Could you break it down in 4 different segments so people can, if they didn't want to call here, they could just look at it, judge, okay, I'm in between. You know,
Yeah, so we could put, I don't know, 100,000, 200, 300, 400? To give them an idea?
Yep.
Instead of just one, do 4 of them. And they can, like you say, if it's 250, then they can figure it in between here and here.
they have a general idea, you know.
Mhm.
That might save a couple of phone calls here, but because some people just don't like to call just for some, you know.
Yeah,
On what Jason has displayed, you could easily show that in tabular form
sure.
in $100,000 increments, up to a $500,000 house if you want. I'm not sure how many houses in the township fall in that category. I'm sure
There's
there's
enough.
enough.
There's not that many.
No, there's a few.
And I would also assume that most of those people probably know what that impact's gonna be as well, but you could show that pretty
If
quickly.
you just run up 200 or 300, you'd be, the other people can figure it out.
Other people probably don't care.
Yeah, but the more information we can give them, the better.
Yeah.
I would say 1, 2, 3, and 4. $100,000 home. This is the taxable value. This is the millage. This is what it'll cost you. 200, so they can see. It'd be easy enough. It's just 4 lines.
$100,000 home would be a $25 tax.
A year.
For that.
For a year, so
Yeah, so that's pretty
just over
insignificant.
$2 a month.
But the people that really at the roads, they really didn't care about the price. I mean, they weren't worried about the price. They just want to know what's going on and what's going to cost them.
And when probably.
And
That
when
was
it's gonna
probably the
take care of
first Question.
You know, they're all pretty good humor. Well, until Dave talked to them, but I mean. But they were, Dave, they were all pretty,
Yeah, their biggest concern is when's my road gonna get done?
yeah.
And that was all they really
That's
cared
what I
about.
figured.
Well, and in this case, it's a pretty defined scope too. You have 2 established parks and several non-motorized facilities. That's what we're trying to fund. It's very defined.
We need to have, this presentation is about the presentation. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. I think we need to get a little more in depth later. Do we need, 67,000? Do we need 138,000? And we don't have to discuss that today, but
Yeah, the millage asks for up to a $500,000, so.
yeah,
You don't
I would like to
have
see in the presentation somewhere with recreation referring to health and, stuff like that. I mean,
Yeah,
it's hard to say that in a way, but it is. The more recreation, more kids get out and
When you-
exercise and do
When
that.
you start
the
putting
better
that
off.
in there, you're now promoting it.
Yeah.
you do
can't
have to be
promote it.
careful that you're not selling the millage.
Oh.
You can only present facts. And I would agree that the public health, welfare, all of that is fairly factual, actually very factual.
Well, look at me for crying out loud. If I would have exercised before.
It's too late, Pete.
Okay.
I'm kidding.
I don't think it would be out of line to detail some of the future plans that we have as well. It may not be the popular thing, but if you're truly trying to gain the attention of the community and to gauge their temperature as far as recreation and planning go, we do have a brand new shiny recreation plan, which, further details partnerships with NTN, possible trailhead development off of Grove, a roof over the ice rink. Those are things that I'm proud of. I'm proud that those are in our documents, that we're working towards that additional connectivity of our trails and acquiring easements and working with the DNR and MDOT. Those are all things to be really proud of. The millage language itself is a bit nebulous in the fact that it does, allow for continuation of recreational facility development as well as maintenance of our parks. I know that the board wanted to frame it in the sense of, it being about current maintenance levels and current service levels, which is really important, but it also, one of the top 3 reasons people move to an area these days is what's your healthcare like? What's your education like? And what's your rec opportunities like? Those are what people are looking at when they decide to move to an area. And if you haven't been paying attention to the housing market, there are a lot of rural properties that are being bought up right now. Ones that have been for sale for years.
Well, I voted I voted when we had the motion to do this. My trepidation is that we don't have a project. There's nothing to hang our hats on. And the first question I asked John was, did Randy just put this in for payroll? And I don't think that's what this should be about. That's what's bothering me.
Well, it was never just about the payroll. I mean,
That's what I wanted to make sure. I mean,
Yeah,
Well,
this
yeah,
is all about,
there's meeting minutes of Springer talking about a rec millage as a way to not just have a little bit of general fund money to throw at a grant every year, but to actually have some seed money to expand on projects and to continue recreational development. I think it came out of the rec committee more than it did anything else.
well, then I think that needs to be made known. Because if we don't, the road project was easy because it was a project. It's something you can put your hands around. This is, we're just asking, we're saying we've got less money from the tribunal, we need to maintain. There's nothing, we're asking for money. There's nothing concrete that they can say, yeah, this will affect my yard or well, my yard or the trail I drive on or ride on. There's nothing they can, it's not personal to them. There's, they're not going to take ownership and say, yes, this is important to me. So if there's a way we can say, even about grant money or, I don't know. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Well, it's wiser use of township dollars if you have the ability to take a little bit of money and apply for grants that double and triple and sometimes quadruple the amount of money that you invest or that we invest.
We know that, but they don't know that. This is Joe Blow going to work in the mine, quote unquote, wherever they're doing. Why are you raising my taxes? Why do you want to raise my taxes? What am I going to get out of it? It's not a new park. It's not a new road. You're not improving my driveway. There's nothing. They might bike, and even then it doesn't say we're adding new trails. We're going to resurface this trail. There's nothing. And this is where I don't have that box circled on my ballot yet, because as a taxpayer, what am I getting out of this? And that's why I asked John, is this just for payroll? Do we need to do something different internally with the general funds accounts?
Yeah, I don't think you can say it's just for payroll.
No.
The whole thing, the whole way we set,
That's what I'm asking.
the whole reason we set out this way was so that we could continue the maintenance at the level that it currently is, because our budget's going down.
Then that's what we have to portray.
Well, and that's what he's saying.
Well, maybe we need to
I
word it a little
think
different.
if you get into the possibility of using some of these funds for match money for grants and stuff, that's dangling the carrot in front of them that Roger's going to come right back and say, no, you can't do that, because you're now promoting something. Or if you pass the millage, we're going to get this.
No. They need to know that that's one of the reasons we need the money. I don't know
I
how you
understood
would
the
word
reason we wanted to do a 2-year millage was so that we could maintain the maintenance of the parks and trails without losing any ground on them. And from my opinion, if you do a 2-year millage, and if you don't if you don't levy all the 2 years, you get all done and you only need $60,000 a year, whatever you need to make the budget balance. Then if you do that and you're honest with the people when you do that, then when you come back in 2 years and say, this worked out really good, we'd like to get some seed money or match money for some grants and lay out a program as to what you want to use that money for, then you're going to get a permanent recreation millage. This is only for 2 years.
That was the other part of it, which just didn't make sense.
Well, that's why we did it, because we did it to
Test the water.
Right.
supplement the maintenance dollars that we didn't have for recreation.
That's to say you're trying to sell, this whole program here, you're selling it. You're selling it to the people what they have.
We have
and
to
what we're trying to
present
do.
it. That's
You're,
the
you're
difference.
presenting the information on what this recreation millage is for.
So the strongest point then needs to be because of reduced revenues in order to maintain, and you said that in different bullets, but that should be the whole focus then. Because of reduced revenues, in order to maintain our parks and pathways at the current level, which is again what you kind of said, but that should be the reason we're doing this, and then everything else below it, so that they
Okay.
can see why. Does that make sense?
No,
Absolutely. Could be the first sentence.
Because, nothing they can see. That should be the line then. And if it's important to them, then they can say, yeah, this is. I agree.
Because when the board passes to put it on the ballot, that was the reason they passed it, is to supplement the maintenance dollars we needed to continue recreation as it is right now.
And I did talk to some residents about it, and they did ask me, well, what's this recreation millage about? And I said, with the various things, we have reduced revenues now. And if you want your parks to stay at the current levels, that's what we need. We need some help. And this also, we did make it nebulous. So if there was any opportunities out there, we could take advantage of them too. But the main focus was to keep what we have and improve on what we have.
In my opinion, if you ended up only taking or levying 0.25 mils instead of 0.5, and used it for just the maintenance for 2 years, you're establishing credibility. You can go back and say, now, if we had a half mil and it was permanent for the next 10 years or something, this is the kind of revenue we can get, and these are the kind of projects we can do, because that $138,000 is going to get us 5 times that in grant money. So it's wise investment, but that's a whole separate deal on what we're talking about.
And the main focus of this was to kind of stabilize our recreation budget for the next 2 years.
Yep.
And
I don't
that's
think
the
I don't think there's any shame in saying that. And I don't think there's any shame in saying that, yeah, if we're successful with this, we'd like to continue to expand upon our assets for you, our residents. That's what we're here to do. We're here to improve the quality of life for residents. If you're not sitting in that chair with that mindset, then you're in the wrong business, because that's what we get paid to do.
if we can't maintain it, we'll never see a slide tubing hill for the wintertime. I mean, we got summer things, but winter times, what do we have? We talked about the tubing hill over there off by the pump road down there, and different other things like that too.
Well, when I explained it to the resident about maintaining what we have and stabilizing the budget, they were fine.
Yeah,
And I think they're going to be like that, but I don't think you can tell them that we're going to have $60,000 left over at the end of year one, and we're going to save that for some matching funds. They're not going to buy that. I wouldn't buy that.
No. But if the main drive is exactly what you've said, then it makes sense. They can.
I'll touch on that point that you mentioned, Lynn, in the first sentence.
Okay.
Maintaining
In order to,
and enhancing the recreational activities within the township.
At current
Yeah.
level.
Yeah.
At current level.
just don't mud it up too much. That's what
Yeah,
Too many words.
And we can't overthink this too.
yeah.
Right.
As long as they understand. That's all.
We're just stabilizing our budget for the next 2 years in recreation, basically. So we don't go backwards.
The biggest concern that Randy had is recreation was not considered an essential service.
Correct.
So if you pay for your essential services up front and there's no money left, you can't fund your recreation, which is why we need the additional funding.
And that's what he was afraid of, because tax tribunal's taking more money.
Correct. The revenue stream is reducing instead of increasing.
And we don't know what 2021 is gonna be like yet either, so it's gonna stabilize our budget for at least 2 years.
We know this budget process is probably one of the hardest ones that the township has had to go through in quite a few years. I wasn't here for it, but I can imagine just based on everything we're dealing with currently. So,
Well, and the whole deal is if the millage passes, you know, for the next 2 years, you've got the money for maintenance on the parks and recreation to continue, regardless of what happens to the rest of the budget. The rest of the budget's gonna have to be tweaked as it will, but you can't, we have the recreational money there then. And that is secure.
And you're proving your point, what you're saying.
Go back to those envelopes again. Okay, anybody else? Okay, I think you have consensus. See if Roger
Okay.
agrees.
We'll see you at the next board meeting with a revised draft of both the
Okay.
presentation and the proposed flyer.
Okay,
the flyer though has to go out before the next board meeting.
yeah, it would.
I think you
Good
got,
point.
We'll just make sure that the calculations for the tax payment based on the $100,000 increments are correct. And they're $25 increments, so 25, 50, 75, or $100 for a $100,000 home. So
and if Roger approves it, it should be good to go.
And you want my suggestion, I would just put the millage wording at the top, at the start of it, and then put the rest of that below it. Because the millage wording is what's gonna get them keyed up to read what you're talking about.
Yeah, good idea.
Okay,
And then put your 400,000 and then your reasoning.
Yeah, that could all be at the bottom.
Yeah. And
You
you've
got
got
it.
room there. Like the pictures too. It draws their eyes to what you're doing, what you're talking about.
all right, guys, thanks for your comments. Have a good rest of your meeting.
Yeah, good luck today.
Thanks.
Free.
thanks, Jason.
All right, that was good.
Well,
Then-
that just means we can whip through this budget in an hour now.
Start with stormwater first, that's the easiest one.
Well, let's do an overview, should we? Sure. That's kind of what we were trying to compile. Rather than go through these line by line, I felt the need for the general fund needed to be looked at specifically because we had certain issues that were important, different things were going on. And I'm wondering if maybe this discussion today, if you want to dig into it, that's fine. Could be a little more general. Lenny and John have been working on things and changing things and want to make some recommendations. And I think we need to start with that preface
Sure.
before we get into numbers, because whys are going to come up. And I don't know if you all got these two breakouts,
email
the
from this morning.
improvements and stuff.
No, I didn't get
These are a big part of what we spend a lot of time on when we talk about the budget. And I think if we have a little better explanation of what this is now, how it affects the asset management program and what it's going to look like next year, we can just visit about that a minute. Or if you think you want to just look at stormwater and pass it and go to the next two small ones. Where we think.
I have an opinion.
Go for it.
In my opinion, I realized these two spreadsheets that you sent out yesterday, they make a lot of sense, but would make this whole process easier is you got your wastewater and your water and your stormwater, and they're all balanced. Life is good. We're not going to raise any rates significantly. We're going to go up, what, 50 cents a month on solid waste?
125 actually, so it's a
Okay.
little bit more than that.
But everything else is pretty much staying where it is. And everything's balanced out. The problem that I have and the problem that everybody else has, and I've talked about it for this will be the 4th year now, is there's money out there that is sitting in the bank, drawing interest, that nobody knows what it's for. You may know what it's for, and you may know what it's for, but nobody else knows what it's for. It's all earmarked for something, and some of it isn't earmarked for anything.
Do I know my board or what?
We didn't talk about this for an hour before coming in here.
This is what the budget, I mean, this is much a part of the budget more than looking at these spreadsheets. Because everybody, you guys know what you're doing. We know you can balance a budget. We know you got the rates down. But the point is the questions I get is you see these balance sheets that you put out and there's money, there's fund balances and retained earnings. And if you go look at it, you've got assets rolled into retained earnings. So it's some huge number that it's not all cash on hand.
Yep.
Just a balance sheet that shows the cash on hand and an accountability for what that cash is earmarked for. And everything in there that it's earmarked should be something that was approved by the board. And if it's not, then it should be used for something else or planned for something else, but you shouldn't be sitting there with $100 that is just sitting there drawing 0.3% interest and nobody knows what we're going to do with it. We're just going to let it sit there and collect interest for 20 years and we're all going to retire. That's not what it's there for. It's there to make the township run. And just a simple summary sheet. And all it's got to do is you got the general fund has got some fund balance and the wastewater and the water and all that has got, and stormwater has got retained earnings at the bottom of it. And if I'm right, the retained earnings include some of your assets. It's
in the accounting system.
It's
yes.
in there someplace.
Yes.
You can't pick out how much cash is on hand. Just a sheet that breaks that down. And if there's $100 in water and $50 of that is in the reserve replacement fund, and there's another $50 in that is going for something else or just laying there collecting interest, the board should be able to see that and know what kind of money is out there and know that all the money that's in that summary sheet is earmarked for something. We shouldn't be laying there with a couple $100,000 that we really don't have anything to do with. And then we come up short someplace and all of a sudden that money's gone because we used it because we come up short. That's not the way the budget's supposed to work. The budget's, you're supposed to have reserve funds there. We passed something back in June of last year or June of 2019.
Yeah, it was shortly before I came. I want to say it was
that-
May, but yeah.
Some definitions that I still don't see. And the one definition is a reserve account. I know some of that money that's in the bank is earmarked for a reserve account. I know it doesn't show up in the budget unless you're putting money from this year's budget into that to build it up. You're not even going to see it, but it's there. Everybody knows it's there. The residents know it's there. You keep saying we've got it covered. It doesn't work. You need to see it. You need to see the money and where it is.
John, isn't it illegal to have extra money just sitting there
No.
for townships?
If you didn't have extra money sitting
I
there,
know that,
you
but
had
I
an
heard that a
emergency,
long time
what do
ago,
you
and
do?
I never did
Yeah.
follow it up with it.
It's
You
not
have
like the
to
fire
have,
department, the
You
assessments
have to
handle
have a
differently.
reserve.
Well, and I understand that according to what was passed last year, you've got a requirement to have, 2% of the general fund and 5% for wastewater and water that's in a reserve account. That money is just sitting there. And there's specific guidelines that said what that could be used for and who had to approve its use. So that money, for all practical purposes, is just sitting there. But my question is there more money sitting there than just that? Or are the general fund is a little short on the money that's sitting there?
okay, so I think what you're asking for is completely fair. What we need to be careful of is we don't look at a fund balance today or a fund balance tomorrow or yesterday, because it will be different every day. What we need to look at from that perspective is the year end audited.
If I could see a year's end, I would just be delighted.
but we get that. It's in the annual audit.
He wants this year's end, not last year's. You're talking about this
There-
year's end balance.
Show me where I can find cash on hand and what that cash on hand is earmarked for.
I can't give you off the top of my head what it's earmarked for because I haven't been here long enough. But this is one of the things Lenny and I are proposing, and some of it's a little bit new to Lenny, but I think he understands the process we want to go through. This year, we're requesting your confidence in us that us setting aside the replacement fund we're requesting, which matches prior years, that's what the replacement spreadsheet is all about. We set that amount aside through our budget process, knowing that we have a CIP process that's out of date, correct? We didn't do a CIP process this year. So we need to schedule a joint meeting between the Planning Commission and the board in the first quarter of next year. The board would establish for the Planning Commission a priority of redeveloping the CIP for the 5 and 20 year, and not just water and sewer, all infrastructure, whether it's our facilities, our parks, you name it, which kind of ties into the first presentation we just had. But the public works CIPs would be based solely on the recommendations of our asset management planning and department field verification of the most critical items. So if the asset management plan says all the numbers crunch out to say you have to do X next year, we go out and verify that project X makes sense, and we make that the first priority of the CIP. If we go out and field verify and say that project X can now become project Z 3 years from now, because what their experience is isn't what our experience is, having managed and operated the system, we can tweak that. As far as the unrestricted reserves, I think that's really where your hang up is, right?
It's a 700,000.
How much?
Never mind.
Well, whatever amount of money there is at year end 2019 is the most solid number we have to go by heading into 2021, because we're not done with 2020 yet. So that's the number we use to create not a depreciation type schedule or amortization type schedule, a schedule that says this is how much money we need for these assets by this date. So it actually justifies why we really have that money. And I'll tell you,
By which date?
By
All the
X
dates
date.
I'm looking at on that spreadsheet have already gone by.
No, he's talking about generalities. What we want to do is to reformat this stuff and get rid of it. And that's what he's trying to get to. So we just spent an hour and a half.
we need to
talking about it.
streamline these lists by asset, not by project that was completed in the last 10 years. Because what these are is demonstrating how we're going to save up the money to redo Werner Street when we need to in 20 years or whatever.
Exactly.
And that's not how we want to set our money aside. We want to set our money aside so that it's in the right envelope at the right
If you
time.
have this amount, and it's back to the AMP, I mean, we haven't seen the final version of that yet, but that should tell you how much money you need to put away every year until something is scheduled for replacement.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
And that's
I
kind
guess
of,
that's where my impatience is, that we haven't seen that yet.
that's kind of what this is trying to tell you, but it's not based on the same information.
But it's telling me what's happened in years past. I want to know in next year, how much money are we going to put away to replace some of our underground infrastructure?
But what that ties back to is what I meant with the 700,000 was back to Pompo's question in the beginning, a bunch of years ago, which is the same thing we keep trying to get back to, and which what I was trying to convey to these guys today. We have money sitting there that has been apportioned already and is being apportioned ahead. And if you remember the discussion, a couple of you, there was about $680 some thousand that Pompo said, what is this for? It's just sitting there. Tell me what this accounts for. And Lois and Kirk said, we can't tell you that. And what they meant was projects have come and gone out of there. We fund it and this one comes up and then that money comes out of there. It was not, and I kept saying we need to earmark. If we have a project, we know it's going to cost $200,000. We're going to save for 4 years. We need to know that that $50,000 is in there for 4 years. And that's what we've been trying to get to for the last 10 years. And we can't seem to get there.
This is
They
the
get
problem
this.
elected officials have when you don't have a money problem. That's my strong opinion, having come from where I have. In places where I've been where there was no money left over at the end of the year, you didn't do anything unless you somehow got aid from the state or federal government, period.
Yeah, we went out
And then
that
when you
loan.
got that aid, they made you raise your rates to where they should have been in the first place. So what we're doing is we're setting our rates where they need to be, knowing what we should be funding. Now we just have to prove to you that we're properly funding what we need to pay for.
And that's all I'm asking for.
Yeah.
I want to know what the money we have is earmarked for, whatever it is, I don't
Yeah.
care.
Mhm.
And I need to know how much money do we need to be putting away this year, next year, and the year after. And for 10 or 15 years out, how much money do we need to put away for each one of these things in your AMP program?
Mhm.
And are we putting it away? And it doesn't take a big spreadsheet to put that together.
No,
It
but
takes a
it
summary.
takes proper analysis of the final AMP that we receive to make sure that we agree with it. So that when we come back to numbers with you, for you, we can say, we looked at this from top to bottom. This is what they said we should do. Here's what we think we should do. And it might be very close, but there's probably some items that are way off. And I can tell you, Lynn and I talked about
There's
this.
no doubt that some of those items, you're going to adjust them out every year because your priorities are going to change, or something's going to be proven that it doesn't need to be replaced when it was scheduled for replacement. And so you're going to always be adjusting those numbers, and that's fine. As long as they show up in a summary sheet that's the way they're adjusted.
Yeah.
But if you remember, part of what my angst was with this, or probably all of ours, not so much that one as this one, the same CIP stuff was on here year after year after year.
Whether it was
And we
approved
kept
or not.
funding it, right, we kept funding it, and we were indirectly approving the CIP when we approved the budget. So it was really approved, and that's why Kirk just kept leaving it on there.
And let me tell you the argument we always got. We always got that it was in the master plan. We approved the master plan, therefore he should be saving money for it.
Right.
Which is absolutely ridiculous in my estimation.
Not until
The
you
master
approve the
plan-
CIP part of it.
Right.
Yeah.
The master plan doesn't mean you start putting money away, because if that's the case, we should be putting the money away for everything that's in a rec master plan, and we don't.
Right.
That's nothing but a plan. And so, yeah, it's the CIP program. And nothing was more frustrating than year after year, watch this stuff appear, and it's the same stuff that we did not approve, specifically did not approve the year before. But there it is again, and we still put dollars into it.
Yeah.
And we
Well,
said
hopefully-
last year, let's take these off. You remember, we've eliminated 3 or 4 of them. We
Well,
said we're
and-
not gonna do them.
And next year, there they are.
Hopefully we can agree they're not there this year in what I sent you this morning.
Yeah, we took them off.
They were the projects that stayed on the list last year, but went into the bottom category. They weren't being included in the approved projects list.
Mhm.
That section's gone completely from the improvement schedule now. We didn't add any new ones yet because we kind of lost a year with the transition of Randy and Kirk leaving, Lenny and I stepping in. Now we have to play catch up because all the tools we needed to finalize that, including us understanding what you were actually after. And that's probably been the biggest challenge to this point, correct? Is getting on the same page. I think we're there. We just need to dedicate the time to get that next step done. My fear is we won't get it done in time to have this budget approved. So that's why I led with asking for your trust to give us the time to get it right by going through the proper CIP process.
And I fully agree with Mr. Pompo's frustrations. Is it gets right down to there's money out there that's not earmarked for something. How much is it? Where is it?
Yeah, and you have to understand that that amount changes every day.
I'm sure it does, but there's
So-
a summary at the end of the year.
Yeah, and I'm not opposed to that at all. I think we can give you that for 2019, and by this time next year, we can give it to you for 2020. So the replacement schedule or the replacement funding schedule is always going to look at the prior completed year, because that's the best solid number we have, knowing that in the interim, the year that you're currently in, that fund balance in the general fund or reserve in the utility funds is going to fluctuate based on your actual revenues and expenditures on that day. So I just don't want the balance sheets to become part of the budget, because they're two separate processes. And I know we've had that
I understand
conversation.
that they're two separate processes, but they are linked together.
Understood.
Because one of the things is the emergency reserve department. It's supposed to be funded to 33% in the general and 25% in water and wastewater.
25% and 33% of that year's operating.
Of that year's approved budget,
Okay, all right.
okay?
Yeah.
And there it is.
Yeah.
So some of that money that's out there, I mean, do we have that money sitting there? And is it
Probably. It
earmarked
just,
for that?
no.
No.
In my opinion, and I don't think it's there, I don't think the 33% is there in the general fund. Do we have a 33%?
That number is probably getting dangerously low, I would guess, based on the current issues with the dark store.
But my issue is if the 33% is there and if the 25% are there, then that's where they stay until you follow the procedures to get them out of there.
Yeah.
And there's specific guidelines on what happens to make those come out of there.
Mm-hmm.
But they should stay there. We shouldn't have to just arbitrarily borrow money out of that and use it for something else. We shouldn't do that. That, in my opinion, the only thing that should happen that would cause that to happen would be a board action that says, yeah, the sky's falling, we need to tap into that money. That takes a board action, but other than that, it should be there. In your end of the year summary, we don't have to wait till this time of the year to get 2019. There's no reason we couldn't have 2020 by the end of the first quarter in 2021.
True, but we want to make sure it's audited numbers.
And he wants to go back and make sure they do to the asset management program too, because none of this is really based on that. So they're kind of looking for at least the first quarter of next year to really solidify.
I think
what
we
those
can give
numbers
you
are.
a quick stab that gives you a better reflection of
Yeah.
what really needs to happen based on the asset management plan, but I don't think it's going to be to the level we want it to be until we actually go through the CIP process. That's my guess, because we can create a spreadsheet that looks a lot like this, that is asset specific, directly from the asset management plan. And it can break it down. Here's the total cost of our system to replace it.
Mhm.
Here's the cost of each asset. Here's how much money we need to set aside based on the life remaining.
Okay, and that's what you're setting aside this year is budget. But what's already there is an accounting of the fund balance. And it's how that fund balance is split up. If you've got, if you have a CIP that you're saving for, that's been approved and we're collecting money for it, that should appear someplace in the reserves. And it should be earmarked for that CIP project.
I really think that's what these are supposed to be
I
telling you.
think so too. But I remember last year, I told Lois, I said, then we need to see the cost centers. And Randy said, yeah, she will set all the account numbers up and we can just do that. put the chart of account numbers in there if we have specific projects. And that didn't happen either.
I mean, when I look at this for water, for example, are you saying that on the 12/31/2020 that this is the dollar amounts that are going to be sitting there for that?
If what we're doing here is true, yes.
I think that the plea of the township board members to make a correction in how we do things has been heard. And I think that our leadership is simply saying, our leadership of the staff is simply saying, please have enough confidence in us that we have heard your requests and we will address them as we can, and we want to do it in a very meticulous way. Just have confidence that we are going to make changes that will satisfy you. I think that's a plea that they've made, and I buy.
And I think to dovetail on that, I don't want to say, let's just pass this and not have any discussion about it, but I think that's what it's going to take in order to get it organized. When I came in today, I think John expected, because when we did general fund, we sat there for 3 hours or whatever it was and went line by line, literally. And I told him this morning, I said, I don't want to do that with this yet, because there's too much that needs to be fixed. And there's some information you guys need first. And I kept trying to get the overall, and I still don't have that. I'm trying to put that summary sheet in my mind and where those numbers are going to come from and what they're going to include. And I told them right off the bat, I said, they want to know where that $700,000 is going. And I'm using that in quotes from before, just to identify it. And it's exactly what you said.
And it's
But we
nothing
need some
personal
time.
I
don't
to
get
think-
it.
either one of
we
you
can't
guys.
do
I get it. I understand your frustration.
But understand where that's coming from is we've been asking for this. I have been asking for this for the past 3 years before this year.
Yeah.
And we just flat out have not gotten what we've been asked for because
They know that.
he didn't feel like putting it together. And so we just didn't get it. You could
Yeah.
ask all day long.
I don't think he still understood what we were asking
I
for.
don't care.
So he couldn't give us what we wanted. He could not give it to us.
And if you're looking, I mean, if fine, as long as you want to put together what you're doing, and I just want to express how frustrated it is and how frustrating it will continue to be if we don't actually get it.
And I think Lenny's gonna have a big impact on this because he's got the nuts and bolts knowledge and can explain it. I mean, how many times has he done a presentation for us and we get it? It's not hard. So he can explain that part even to John and say, okay, in order to do that, John already, I think I've beaten him up enough. He knows what you guys want. We just have to figure out how to put it
You know, it's to
together.
the point now, if somebody said we really don't have an asset management program, I'd say, yeah, that figures.
We do. We just need to act on it now. And we're out of excuses for not acting on it. at
No,
this
I don't
point.
think so, because this has been an awful year. It's not excuse things.
We
It's
need
nobody's
to, we
fault.
need to be heading into it though.
Yeah,
And
well, this is part of it though, too.
so here's my new proposal. Lenny and I will pull out the asset management plans tomorrow. I can't remember what I have on my calendar, but
This
we
week.
might be able to break this down fairly quickly to say, Lois, what was the pot of money at the end of 2019 that we're talking about? We can break down the assets by percentage of total value of the infrastructure, allocate that pot of money by asset after you take out the emergency fund, right? Because you have to fund your emergency fund first.
Certainly part of the pot of money that's sitting there, right?
Yeah, so 25% comes right off the top. Now you know what the 25% value is.
Exactly.
It might be a lot bigger than you thought, it might be less. We don't know that. But we can probably come up with that fairly quickly.
That's all I'm asking for.
Yeah, those numbers should be in the audit, and Lois can also give them to us pretty quickly.
Okay, but you said before, in our meeting, you were talking about the contingency. We always keep going back to the contingency fund and how we take it right out. Your recommendation was to take it right out of the budget and put it wherever it was supposed to go. But then we still have to have, and maybe that's what we replace it with, is that 25%. So that it
Yes.
has a different definition.
The
Emergency is part of the budget, though.
I know.
It is, yeah,
But
but
here's-
not have contingency. Put the emergency fund in there instead.
So
No, I don't agree to that.
No?
No, the contingencies for very specific things. It's for projects that you're doing through the year, and it's for cost overruns. That's what contingency.
right, but my point is, if you have cost overruns beyond what you budgeted,
Mhm.
the board should approve the budget amendment anyway. And in order to spend contingency funds, you have to approve the budget amendment. So whether it's in fund balance or reserve or a contingency line, to me, doesn't matter. If you want to define it differently and keep it in there, I'm okay with that. I'm just saying, we can do things differently.
You just recommended taking it out and putting it where it needed to be, or it was expected to be.
I think they understand what we're talking about. And now we just have a conference and get it done and just let them go at it for the next couple of months.
I think we
Approve
can
the
come
budget
back
and
with a
move on.
first draft. It just
Well,
might not be accurate enough for us to
I
be
would
confident in it.
just like to see the definitions that we come up with in last June or wherever that was. Applied. And a summary sheet, just like you were just talking about. That's all. I mean,
Okay.
the rest of it really, the rest of the budget is just,
Fall in place.
it just falls in place. I mean, this is what you're gonna spend, and this is what we're gonna bring in, and it's balanced, and everybody's happy with it. Unless you're gonna go through and say, I want $100 out of this, and I wanna put it up in that, it's gonna stay about the same. And that's why we do all the budget amendments, we gotta move money around.
I agree.
Anyway, you know. where I'm coming
Overall, the
from.
budget process is fairly simple. There's a few little niches
Yeah,
that,
it's pretty straightforward.
that make it complicated.
And the only reason we had spent historically so much time on these two accounts primarily is because we weren't getting those definitions and those answers and those specific numbers. So we would end up inadvertently going line by line. Well, what is this for? What is that for? And is that a CIP? And is it a project? Well, is it in place? Has it been funded? We keep going in circles. We're just constantly in circles.
Well, and that's what I think,
We
if
weren't
we
getting
had this in place, this whole budget thing could be in 2 meetings and we'd be done.
Yeah, exactly.
If the definitions that were approved or were applied, and we had that summary sheet that tells us where our money is, the rest of it is just, it's just spreadsheets and paperwork, and as long as it's balanced at the end, or unless we have some pet project that somebody wants to see done, it doesn't make any difference.
Right.
Yeah. Well, we might not get it exactly in the format you're looking for on our first try, but we can certainly try in about 2 weeks.
I'll
I
tell
would
you if
say.
you're wrong.
He's gonna tell you got smoke and mirrors.
No, I think they just need to.
Okay, I ran it long enough. about
Yeah.
that.
They need to
Your
know
points are
what we're
definitely-
looking for.
Received, and it's not that they fell on deaf ears with me last fall. I think it's a matter of getting on the same page.
Yeah, we're fine.
I would say we just close up shop for today, and unless you think, go ahead.
Does anyone have general comments regarding what we presented
That's what I was
among the
gonna say.
4 different funds?
Yep. Go ahead, Ernie.
I've been listening. Dave's made great points, but when you mentioned Dan, I had already been thinking about Dan on that. And when I looked at the spreadsheet, I printed it out today and I threw it down and I looked at it again. And I said, this is what Dan was talking about. When you look at per year here, this is all these different projects. He was always asking, where's this money sitting? And that, where is it? And that.
Exactly.
And I'm saying, well, according to this, we should have $248,465 set aside for these projects for this year.
That
Whether
would
we
be
use
what-
it or not, it's
Yeah.
put aside so we know what's going to happen in X number of years out.
Mhm.
But then I said, okay, The first one is collecting mains, 75 years. Is it 75 years from today, or was it 75 years from 5 years ago?
Remember, I
Right.
asked Lois
Or
to
where was
date
it at?
this a few
And
years
that too.
ago. That didn't
We
happen.
don't know in that.
Yep.
And the dollar amount, at the end, it was $5 million. We don't have $5 million. We're nowhere near it. So
What's already been collected? Well, it goes back to the 700,000 because the year afterward, we had to take money out of that for some other project. So it got corrupted in a sense that what money we had set aside was being used for something else.
my comment, has any of these dollars been used?
We don't
Simple as
know.
that, too. So
Yep, we don't
That's,
know.
that's the biggest question mark. These numbers were never adjusted when some of the money was spent down. So that's where the difference ends up being in what we should have versus what we do have, right? And I think if we're going to go back into this, we almost need to start over based on what the asset management plan dictates. We reallocate based on the percentage that asset costs over the whole utility. Knowing full well that one specific asset is going to take more money up front than all of the rest of them. So we've got to find that right balance. But I think this was a good plan. It just was missing the subtraction numbers. That's why.
Well, and there's no balance forward or balance to date or,
Yeah, I
I
can't
have
tell
no
you
idea
what
what
happened in
those
the
numbers
past,
are.
obviously.
That's
So-
why Lois kept saying, I can't tell you what those numbers are.
And she probably
Because you
can't
couldn't.
because
Yeah.
when money was being spent, it wasn't being pulled from specific lines right here.
Mhm.
I think also on the budget, I look at it this, it gives us as a board an idea what's happening within the area.
Yeah, you can look at the front and know what's going on.
Then you look at the detail, maybe I'm too used to looking at details in the past, going through everything, but you go through and it gives you a little insight as to what's happening in that. So
The spreadsheets in the back are, if I read the summary pages in the front and I come up with a question, the spreadsheets in the back are to go look up and see what's going on.
Right.
I have to pour through those spreadsheets and have a finite understanding of everything that's going on there. That's not my job, that's your job.
From that perspective, you answer all of the questions that I anticipate in the write-up. You know where we put the fire hydrants for Ontario Phase 2. You know where we put the manhole castings for because it's in the write-up. You don't get that from the spreadsheet.
Right. And if I have a question, I can go look it up under that account and see how much it's costing us or where the money went,
Yeah.
which I do
So-
have a question.
You do have a question? Do we have time to,
Yeah, go for it.
When we started out, we did the project that we put the grant request in for.
the backyard?
The one, yeah.
Yeah,
And we said we were gonna loan the general fund the money for the matching funds for that out of the stormwater, correct?
yes, yes.
I think technically that could be a direct expense out of the stormwater fund.
But initially, that's what we did.
Okay, initially.
Yes.
The question that came up is, didn't the general fund loan the stormwater fund money to start out with that never got paid back?
Years and years and
Years and years and years
We never
ago,
paid that
I
on that.
don't know.
$70-some thousand.
No, I think it was more than that.
Okay,
Some sort of seed.
my question is why are we borrowing money from stormwater when actually
The old,
they had money that wasn't put back? It's just, I know it's just a paperwork thing, but do you understand what I'm saying?
My opinion is the stormwater fund should be paying the match on that project.
That's fine.
That's why we have a stormwater fund. And as long as we continue to as long as we continue to collect admin fees on every site development we have, there's another $500 going into the pot. Everything else should be covered by the escrow for that fund, all of the stormwater review fees and everything else. So that admin fee is intended to cover our costs. And we haven't been charging against it, so that number should continue increasing.
My question was from what we originally talking about. It was going to be a loan out of the stormwater back to the general fund to pay for that. And it
I
just
think this
occurred to
should
me
just
is
be-
why, because the stormwater fund owes the general
Yeah.
fund money anyway.
No, it came from the wastewater fund.
Oh, did it? Okay.
So I believe this match should come directly from the stormwater fund, but we're already assuming that the fire hydrants and manhole castings that we're buying for Ontario Phase 2 might apply as our match to that, because it exceeds $5,000.
Well, you're talking about two different things, so you're talking about what should happen going forward, and he's
No,
questioning what. already
mine was a
happened.
general question, is we seem to be borrowing money from
Yeah.
stormwater. that
He's
was
trying to
already
answer
borrowed.
what we can do going forward.
Yeah.
You're questioning what happened. So,
And I'm fine with that.
I don't know, I
Well,
remember
we
that.
probably need to start seeing some transfers out of the stormwater fund eventually back into the wastewater fund. to pay
Back to where it
that.
came from. I mean,
Right. Yeah.
There isn't that much money in the stormwater fund to start with.
No, there's not.
Right. The fund balance is less than when it started. Probably 40-something
I
thousand.
don't have the fund balance on that.
anyway, that was a question.
So my comments are, there's no utility rate increases in water or wastewater, correct?
Correct.
There's only gonna be the garbage going up $1.25, correct?
Correct. For a
And
total
that's-
of
And it
$15
has
a
nothing to do
year.
with us.
And that's not really a township raise, because that's coming directly from the landfill.
Mhm.
It's a
So
pass-through
it's a
cost.
pass-through cost, so the residents, other than, will not see an increase really from the township this year.
That's
Except for
correct.
1.25 for solid waste.
Yeah, but that's not the township doing that, that's solid waste.
It's a direct pass-through cost.
So we can just approve the budget today?
We could,
And that's kind of what where
Except
I'm
you can't
going,
take action today.
right?
but I mean, I think, we'll have a couple wrap-up sessions, but I guess if anyone has any questions going forward.
Let's see what these guys can put together, and
In a
I'll
couple
help
weeks,
with what
yeah.
I'm thinking. And yeah. in a
We
couple
have
weeks.
time. We have time.
Yeah, we've got a lot of.
The good thing about
Yes, we
today's
do.
meeting, the good thing about today's meeting is that when you ask a question and they answer it, you can understand it a little bit more. Before, when Kurt would give us an answer, you'd say, huh? So.
What answer?
Well, this is
It wasn't his fault.
this is
I know,
my
it's a combination
suggestion.
of all the stuff that he was going through,
Yeah,
plus,
We don't have our next budget session until later October, because Lois and myself are extremely busy
oh,
at the
sure.
moment.
too.
And it's not fair to us to get this stuff, because we got another 1,000 ballots to get out between now and the middle of
that's
October.
budget.
so.
The more time you give us to work on this replacement schedule, the earmarking of reserve funds, we'll work on what we're even gonna call it. Hopefully,
It would be
hopefully it
nice if we
fits
called it-
within the
like everybody
definition.
called it the same thing.
Yeah.
Yep. The more time we have to work on that, though, the more comfortable we will be presenting it to you, because it's based on real data that we spent significant time, effort, and resources in collecting. So
So let's just plan on like a month, okay? You've got a couple weeks to work on it. He's got the election to worry about. We'll look at it this in like 3 weeks. And if you've got something in the meantime we can look at, great. But as far as scheduling
I
work
think-
sessions.
I think after the election in early November would be
Mhm.
perfect, because
Yeah,
then everything on that is done. And we still have a month and a half to get our final budget in.
So-
I think if you come up with the stuff we were talking about, and if we look at something first meeting in November, we're fine. Like I said, I don't think it makes any difference. It's a balanced budget. We're not switching where we're spending money. We're not charging higher fees. Nobody's got to figure that out.
let's justify our slush funds.
Yeah, justify the
Don't
slush.
say-
I know I'm using that term very loosely,
yeah.
but that's what everyone's thinking, right?
Yeah,
It looks like a slush fund.
They're not. We know. We just don't know what.
Well, in a month from now, Lenny and I are gonna know much better. So what I envision being an issue is we want to break it down by cost center, but the cost center might not be specific enough to the assets, so we'll have to figure that part out.
All I'm looking
That
for is a
summary
summary sheet
Yeah,
that says this is
without-
how much money is there and this is what it's earmarked for. That's all I'm looking for. This is what was there at the end of 2019. This is how it's split up and where it's designated to
Yep.
go. And the bottom line is both totals come out the same. And if there's some uncommitted portion in there, then call it what it is. It's uncommitted.
Well, I don't think we will end up with uncommitted because we know our replacement costs are exceeding the revenue we're setting aside. And that's because we've been drawing it down, building it up, drawing it down, building it up. And the drawdowns aren't reflected in the replacement schedules. And that just dawned on me as we're sitting here today. So we'll connect all the dots.
We will have a different structure here in November, so let's get done what we can, I guess. It's not that it can't change before December 31st.
Well, the last thing I want to do is see such a significant unresolved issue go to another year without demonstrating that we're doing everything we can to fix
I
it.
don't see that happening.
So hopefully we can come up with something fairly quickly. And that Lois agrees with too, so that the accounting end of it is easy to maintain.
But I think you guys have a better idea of what the board's looking for.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of how to present it and where to get, how to get it so that it makes sense.
Simpler the better for me. Just
Mm-hmm.
looking for a couple numbers.
Yeah, and I don't think it'll be that easy for us to be able to give it to you confidently. It'll be more like the spreadsheet you have. It's just the spreadsheet you have is going to reflect real numbers, not what's supposed to be there.
Well, like I said.
Are we on the same
before,
page?
This is
I don't
your,
need to see a spreadsheet.
yeah, this is this worksheet. We don't need to see this. I mean, it's good for information, but
Yeah, if I'm looking at the summary sheet and I said, what in hell is he talking about? Then I can go to the spreadsheet and find out what you're talking about. But I'm just talking about a summary sheet. This is the cash we have on, this is the money we have on hand that's not part of the budget. And this is how it's broken out. This is what it's for. In general terms, I don't need to know that you're gonna buy 2 fire hydrants. I don't care.
and that's what this is. It's just too involved for the board.
Okay.
Just at the bottom, and then you put a little thing that's uncommitted funds and the whole totals add up. And when somebody says, where is all that money you've got? And you say, there it is, right there.
And if you have
It's that
questions,
easy.
go in the spreadsheet.
Well, we could tell them what bank it's in, but that's not enough.
It's not the same.
Right.
When you look at the
Lush phone.
I just felt it. Thank you.
budget for 2021, the wastewater on the total expenditures is 1.245 million, okay? As of June 30th, wastewater on the unrestricted is 2.492. And you're sitting there. That kind of dollar sitting there, what is it for? And that's not even talking about the restricted fund that's sitting there as of June 30th. Too, so. And you can look at the water, the same thing in that too. So water is a little bit more tight, but it's getting more fluid, getting easier in that too.
Yeah, I think it's heading in the right direction. And the biggest reason why is we're not planning any projects, right? If you're not spending it down, it can build up.
Not through interest.
No. It's not gonna get there just collecting the interest.
No.
It's through setting aside funds to fund your replacement projects.
It's identifying projects that need to be addressed over the next number of years.
Yeah, 5 and 20-year CIP is the big, it's what connects all the dots. So that part, there's no way we'll get that done this year, obviously.
Well, it would be nice to know or be able to look at something that says, we gotta start replacing the water mains in X year, and this is where the money's coming from, and by the time we get here, this is the money we should have available to do that.
Yep, that's what these replacement schedules are supposed to say, but there's never been any money subtracted from it. So they're artificially inflating the number that we supposedly have sitting waiting for that.
Is there any way you can go back when you look at your spreadsheet, like useful life? Are we at 75 or are we at 70 now or at 65 or that? Or is there any way you can?
That's all in the asset management plan. We know exactly the year it was constructed. We know what the useful life is. We know what the remaining useful life is. Now, that's all hypothetical, of course.
Understand, but you have to have a base to go by.
Yep. That is all in the asset management plan for both utilities. And the next item you have to look at is the criticality. So if it's a primary feed from the well field to the water tank, and the city of Marquette can't provide us any water, that is the highest criticality piece of pipe we have.
You readdressed your priorities at that point in time.
Yep. Right.
Any questions about the budget though that you had that you thought you were gonna talk about today? Before I do the rest.
Sorry, guys.
Dan, anything from you?
No, I'm just sitting here taking it all in, and I think we're at a good place right now, as best we can be anyhow, so. I think if John can put that together, then that'll help us a lot. Like Dave was saying, we've never had the answers that we were always looking for, so.
Unfortunate. But here we are. Going forward, it'll be better.
Yes.
But at least we have a balanced budget and no rate increases,
Yeah.
other than solid waste, which is not our baby. Though.
Yep, that's
Really, all we have is reallocation of where they want activities to happen.
Yeah, and it sounds to me like part of the work we have to do to figure that out isn't even necessarily what we need to provide you at our next meeting. We just have to demonstrate that we know what the money is intended for and how much it is.
Someday I'll come in and talk to you on my questions, because really,
Wait till after first of the year, because we won't have enough time.
Well, you know, crunching numbers isn't that bad. It's just making the time to focus on it, because you got to get it right the first time.
Mhm.
I do, but I am happy that this township doesn't have to raise rates this year comparatively to other places.
We'll probably see it, especially in water, like we were saying in 22.
Yeah.
And by 24, we're gonna have a couple loans paid off, at least one, and figure out where we're gonna go next, so that the next board is gonna have to spend a good year figuring out, what do we do next? You know, you can't wait for 4 more years. You gotta do it a couple years ahead.
2 boards from now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but then we need to start it, or say, no, we're not, again, just leave it status quo. When those loans go away, we keep the money and we just figure out what we're gonna do then.
Well, next year's budget pledges to do as much of our infrastructure upgrades within the O&M budget as we can get done. And we're not planning to hire contractors for anything at this time. We may have to hire them for something that, we've got a hydrant down on Wright Street that looks like it's gonna be too big of a project for us to do, so we might have to hire that one out, but if we can't just replace the guts on it.
But you're not gonna add any staff either, right, this next
Right.
year?
The plan is to maintain the current staffing level we have, even though we budgeted to maintain the level we had. So when Lenny moved up, basically Randy left general fund, I moved into it, Lenny moved up, leaves a vacancy at the bottom that we're going to keep there as long as we feel we're managing the workload, knowing the uncertainty of the effects of COVID on this year and next, to make sure that if anything, we improve our situation by the end of the year.
I would like to see money put aside in the next couple of years on drainage. We've got a drainage problem out there we have to correct sometime. We shouldn't have people putting sandbags in front of their doors.
That's
The
not
water
our
don't come in.
responsibility.
Huh?
That's not our liability. It's not.
You know that's part of the project that we're working on though. that
Well,
we-
if it's specific,
I know, but I
yeah.
mean, we have to do something about that.
That one
Can't
in
just be putting it, that
particular,
wasn't part of the project, we can't keep saying that, because we created part of that. It
Well-
wasn't as bad as it is now.
the point I'm making is that specific situation you raised is part of the dialogue we're putting into our full proposal, in that the grant we're applying for is not to improve flooding situations. It's to improve water quality situations, non-point source pollution. If we put a ditch along the front of their property, it's going to catch all of the runoff that comes down that hill, carrying all the sand that gets transported into the creek. It's an improvement to the quality of that watershed. And oh, by the way, it keeps the water from continuing down into their garage. And they said, if we don't have to pay for it, we'll let you put a ditch in our front yard. How many people say that these days?
Yeah.
I don't know of anybody besides them in particular that would say, yeah, you can put a ditch in our front yard. Just don't make me pay for it. So that's just one of the benefits that I think this project could provide us. We're too early to know exactly how this is going to go, but if we can make that project work, we'll accomplish some pretty good things, I think, just on backyard.
I just think one of the questions engineering should have asked is, where's that water going to do and how is it going to affect the people, affect, the runoff?
Well,
But that was never asked. I
that's what we
mean,
paid.
you could bid on the road, but then you say, okay, we're gonna have a problem here. Do you want to have a second bid on that one to correct the problem there? It's going to create by doing this.
Yeah,
I just think they should have engineering.
I obviously wasn't
Better
here
job.
when we went through that process. I'd have to believe that any good engineer would have raised some of those concerns, and
We
and I
relied on
feel like-
EPA for that.
Exactly.
I feel like some of them were addressed. Otherwise, we wouldn't see the spillways out there where they were put.
Mhm.
It's just
A few of them.
all of
got
them weren't
something.
anticipated,
Yeah.
is my
Yeah.
guess. And when you're doing just a resurfacing project, you're not going to capture everyone.
Right,
That's-
exactly.
There's,
So from that perspective of it being a project, yeah, we're kind of culpable a little bit. It falls more to UPEA. But if we can identify and figure out, like in this case, that there's a way to fix it and we don't all have to pay.
They said we should have another drainage district or something like that.
I asked
don't know.
Randy about that one time
Yeah.
and he said, no, he didn't. He had talked to all the powers that be in the county and they said, no, we either didn't qualify or we
Oh, really?
something.
Because that's what they were telling me.
So-
Summers was telling me that
That's
you
first
should
thing
have
I
another
asked years
district.
ago, yep.
here's the way it works to establish an additional county drain. All the people along that drainage route have to petition the drain commissioner to do it. If they do that and he agrees to create the drain, he now has the right to charge them whatever it takes to establish it.
Mhm.
So who in their right mind is going to petition to have themselves charged to establish it?
Well, it depends on how
Right.
important it is to them. If their house is being adversely affected or the value even, it might be important enough to them.
That's the
Like a special
question.
assessment, you know,
How many other
do
people are
that.
willing to step up, right?
Does it have to be like 100% in that area?
I
or-
believe the drain commissioner has the ability to raise whatever funds necessary to establish it.
No, I mean,
once it's-
Everybody has to, the whole 100%
Yeah,
in that
everyone
area,
would be special assessed their share,
but they would all have to petition is what I mean.
correct?
Okay.
I don't know if there's a certain percentage or not. I have to go back to the county drain law or whatever it's called.
Mhm.
I have a copy printed out. I just have to find it again. But the drain commissioner has significant authority once the drain is established.
And I told him then, I said, then let's get him in here, let's have a conversation, a meeting, and Randy poo-pooed it. Somebody else was in the office too when we were talking about it.
Well, the drain commissioner is the one that told me that we need another drain.
So maybe Randy never did approach him. Somebody else was, maybe. it
I'm
was
just
stuck
telling
in
you the
the
problem that
office.
we have, because when it rains real bad, I go out and ride around and just see how bad it is. And we could, simple fix or something like that, Just like lighting, I was talking to Ryan, Ryan, about asking Light and Power, we should have a discount on our lighting because they're not maintaining, are they supposed to maintain the lighting in the area? Because a lot of our lighting is covered by branches and we might as well shut them off. Rising. I'm gonna ask him that.
That's a good question. What else? Anything?
I got no public comment.
Okay, we don't
I
even
just
need
got one
to.
other question for John.
Sure.
You were mentioning that you're not going to be doing anything with staff. What about any retirements? Would that affect your budget much if you had a retirement? Would that save some money on a new hire?
If we have a retirement next year, we would want to hire somebody to get back to the level we're currently at.
Okay.
Which is already below the level that we established last year. So having 6 guys in the Public Works Department is our focus through the end of 2021.
Okay, and maintaining that 6.
Correct.
Okay.
Because if we keep expanding and, you know, adding more houses and stuff like that, you can't go with less people
Right.
to maintain the, you know.
Yeah. I honestly don't know that we can go long-term at a staffing level of 6 either.
Exactly.
Because sooner or later, there's going to be something that we can't get done because we're not
It's gonna
prioritizing.
come up and bite you.
But I think we all feel that there's reorganizing, or whether it's priorities or workload or up shifts or whatever, that you guys can improve on what we're doing now.
There's no doubt about that. And
And then when you get to that point, then you say, okay, no, we're gonna need somebody else.
You got 1 year to get everything done, so. You
is
got
that
4 years.
365 days or is it
Well, you
counting
got
on
time.
it? Not anymore.
No pressure.
Calendar days or business days?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sure you've heard the term that you're burning daylight, right?
Quite familiar with it.
No, I think you're gonna do.
Well, I appreciate everyone's feedback. I think that gives Lenny and I some good direction. Puts a little pressure on us, but I think we can come back with something.
But it's good pressure because you'll feel more organized. You'll have
On next year's CIP process as well.
Yeah.
You've just forced us to do it a little sooner than maybe we had anticipated, but it's good.
But
All
I
good.
think we feel good with the budget. I
Yep.
think overall, just in a general
The
sense.
budget's all right. If we can
Yeah,
pass that
we're
anything.
And when I say the term forced, I don't say that in a derogatory way. I think it's
Oh, we didn't take any offense.
perfect.
Yep, I think we're in a good place.
Okay, so I guess you can adjourn the meeting.
Sure. What does the computer say? 250, what?
2:50.
250, okay.